and then I saw an attempt on his life. This bullet flew by his ear, and it came so close to his head that it busted his eardrum.
Imagine being faced with an event so impactful that it seems to have come straight from the pages of an ancient prophecy. Something so precise, so unexpected, that it makes even the most skeptical raise their eyebrows and ask themselves, could this be the result of chance or a destiny already set? This is exactly what we are talking about when we refer to what happened to Donald Trump, an episode that seems to have been predicted a long time ago, long before the political spotlight focused on it. Biblical prophecies, omens from spiritual leaders, and events that converge in an impressive way, all coming together to shape what seemed to be Trump's destiny. But was this really chance? After all, there are those who believe that nothing in the American political world happens without a deeper purpose. Trump, amid all the controversies and challenges, appears to be on an ongoing battlefield, facing not only political opponents, but perhaps also an even more complex force. And this leads us to reflect on whether this moment would have been a way of testing their resilience and purpose. Many wondered after this episode, was Trump's destiny set beforehand, as if a mission had been handed to him? Trump was quick to interpret this almost fatal event as a miracle. For him, there was no doubt. Something beyond human understanding protected him that day. He himself publicly mentioned that the deflected bullet could be proof of divine intervention, an invisible hand that took him away from the impending tragedy. In moments like this, belief in superior forces becomes inevitable, and this echoed in the minds of many, reinforcing the idea that their survival was predestined. Imagine yourself in a situation where your life is hanging by a thread, and the unexpected happens. It's not difficult to feel the presence of something bigger taking care of the details. By interpreting his survival as a miracle, Trump brought to light a spiritual dimension that resonated deeply with many of his supporters. In times of doubt and uncertainty, the notion that he had been spared for a specific reason caused many people to renew their faith, not only in him, but also in what he represented. There is a curious parallel here, something that reminds us of historical leaders who, at crucial moments, went through inexplicable situations and emerged even stronger. It was as if Trump's survival served as a reminder. There is something bigger behind the events that move the pieces on the political board. This miraculous interpretation also reinforced the image of Trump as someone destined to fulfill an important purpose. For those who believe in divine intervention, his escape from death was not simply luck, but confirmation that he was where he was supposed to be, doing what needed to be done. In moments like these, the connection between spirituality and leadership becomes palpable, and people find all the more reason to believe that Trump could be an instrument in a greater mission, possibly a defender of traditional values and a kind of spiritual guide. In troubled times, from that point on, he wasn't just Trump on a political journey. He was a man on a mission, guided and protected by forces many believe to be heavenly. And as fervent debates about his role spread, the figure of Pastor Brandon Biggs emerged, someone who seemed to have a direct connection with the prophecies that already involved Trump. Let's move on to topic 4. Pastor Brandon Biggs's prophecy also mentioned something profound, a wave of patriotism that would emerge in the United States after the incident involving Trump. It was as if the near attack had awakened something dormant in the hearts of Americans. Biggs described this wave as people from all corners of the country lighting their torches, a symbol that evoked a sense of unity and fighting for traditional values. In fact, after the incident, it was possible to see how the streets were filled with supporters raising flags and proclaiming the desire to return to a time when the values of homeland, family, and faith were more respected. This resurgence of patriotism became evident in demonstrations, marches, and, especially, on social media, where the expression of support for Trump and what he symbolized grew exponentially. The feeling was that the country, at that crucial moment, needed to come together to defend something more important than any political dispute. It was a battle for the very spirit of the nation. Thus, Biggs' vision of a population raising their torches seemed increasingly real, bringing a mix of hope and determination that echoed across the country. After all, when someone feels that their way of life is threatened, the natural reaction is to defend what is most dear to them. In this scenario, many local communities began to organize meetings and events that reaffirmed their beliefs and traditions. What could be seen as a simple act of solidarity, such as painting the flag in front of the house or getting together to pray for the country's leadership, became a powerful symbol of this patriotic wave. People met, exchanged stories, and built a feeling of unity that seemed lost for a long time. It was a spontaneous movement, which arose from the need to believe that together they could make a difference, that each individual, even in small actions, contributed to keeping the flame of national identity burning. As this tide of patriotism spread, the pastor's prophecy also warned of difficult times to come. He predicted an economic collapse that would test the spirit of the American people, a crisis similar to the Great Depression. But, like the torches raised, this would also be an opportunity for rebirth, a call for a collective and spiritual awakening that would bring transformation. Many have heard of prophecies, but few believed that they would be seeing one unfold in the 21st century before their own eyes. And the most interesting thing? This is not just an isolated miracle, but something much greater, a spiritual battle, a scenario of forces that dispute not only the power of a nation, but the very soul of a people. What happened to Trump is not just a story about politics, but one about purpose, about unseen forces acting on human destinies. A true battlefield between light and darkness, where the consequences affect not only Trump's life, but that of an entire nation. Pastor Brandon Biggs predicted an economic collapse of overwhelming proportions, something reminiscent of the iconic Great Depression. He described a crisis that would not only affect American families' finances, but also their faith, forcing people to turn to something bigger than themselves. And for many, the prophecy seemed to make more and more sense as economic indicators wavered and uncertainty hovered over the market. Biggs spoke of this event as a kind of divine corrective measure, a necessary shock to bring forth a deeper sense of renewal and faith. For him, it wasn't just a crisis, it was an opportunity in disguise. Many experts always talk about the economic cycle, that ups and downs are inevitable, but Brandon Biggs saw beyond the numbers. He saw the spiritual dimension behind events. He believed this collapse was a way to test the American people, to renew the faith many had lost in material comforts. In a way, this idea of renewal takes us back to what people experienced during the Great Depression, when society was forced to find strength in its values and in its communities. Biggs suggested that in the face of adversity, there would be a rebirth, a return to basic principles, a reunion with the faith and values that had made the nation strong. During the first signs of crisis, many people began to seek refuge in their communities and spiritual places. Churches filled up again, neighbors started coming together to help each other, and the essence of what Biggs called spiritual rebirth began to show itself little by little. There was something beautiful about people's resilience, something that recalled the times when, despite the difficulties, the human spirit always prevailed. Indeed, this renaissance was not just about economics. It was about rebuilding ties and discovering that the strength of a people is not just in material goods, but in what they believe in and how much they are willing to fight for what is right. And, as the financial crisis challenged the country, Trump also emerged as a central figure in this transformation. In one of Biggs' visions, he was seen in a moment of prayer at the White House, surrounded by political and spiritual leaders, a moment that indicated that, even at the center of power, there was a recognition of the need for divine guidance to get through those difficult times. In one of his most significant visions, Pastor Brandon Biggs depicted Donald Trump in a solemn act of prayer at the White House, surrounded by spiritual and political leaders. It was a scene that symbolized something profound, the union between power and faith, recognizing that, even in the highest sphere of power, there was a need to draw strength from something greater. Trump's prayer represented more than a symbolic gesture. It was a call for the entire country to turn to the divine in a time of crisis. Imagine the weight of being in a room where decisions that affect millions of people are made, and yet recognizing that there is a force above it all. For many, this image of Trump in prayer reinforced the idea that he was on a mission guided by something that transcended the political sphere. This was not just a man making difficult decisions, but someone who saw himself as an instrument of divine purpose, seeking guidance at a time when the country needed hope and direction. The spiritual leaders present in this vision also played a crucial role. They represented a kind of coalition of faith and power, a unity that, for many, was what was missing in modern times. By uniting the power of politics with spirituality, the vision suggested that the way to overcome the crisis lay in the union of these two pillars. This moment of prayer was also interpreted by many as a symbol of humility. Trump, often portrayed as an imposing and steadfast man bending over in prayer, showed that even the most powerful have their vulnerabilities and recognize the importance of seeking divine guidance. This did not go unnoticed by the public, who began to see this stance as a sign that, despite political and economic difficulties, there was a deeper hope, which went beyond pragmatic solutions and involved a spiritual calling. It was as if Trump was assuming, at that moment, a role as a spiritual leader, in addition to a political leader, something that resonated deeply among his supporters. As the country watched this spiritual movement rise to the center of power, another layer of this story became clear. The moment of prayer at the White House was not just a response to the economic crisis, but was part of a larger conflict, a spiritual clash that, according to Biggs, was at stake. The vision of Trump in prayer was just the beginning of the awareness that, behind all politics and economics, there was an invisible battle being fought. Stories about curses and prophecies have long surrounded U.S. presidents, and Donald Trump was no exception. Pastor Brandon Biggs brought to light an ancient omen from the 19th century, a prophecy of Native American origin that spoke of a curse that would plague the country's presidents. According to this belief, a series of tragedies would befall those who occupied the White House, with many presidents facing tragic fates during their time in office. This presidential curse became a topic of debate when the assassination attempt on Trump came to light, fueling the idea that his fate was inevitably linked to forces far beyond the political. The prophecy mentioned that every president elected in years ending in 0 would be destined to face death or a tragic event while in office. Some historical events, such as the assassinations of Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, only reinforced the fear that there was a curse afoot. When Trump went through that moment where his life hung in the balance, many wondered if he was falling victim to that same fate. Biggs argued that perhaps it was not the end, but a test, a spiritual challenge that would need to be overcome to break the tragic cycle that surrounded the presidency. And why does this matter? Because there is much more than meets the eye. These prophecies, premonitions, and spiritual visions bring to light a reality that affects our belief in destiny and the power of divine forces. Every detail of this story is interconnected, from the assassination attempt to Trump's resilience, his prayer at the White House, and the events that followed. Everything fits together in a way that defies logical explanations and makes us want to know more, leads us to seek to understand. What is Trump's role in this already prophesied plot? This idea of a historical curse brought even greater weight to the spiritual scenario involving Trump. By linking the attack to prophecy, Biggs suggested that Trump, by surviving, was not only fulfilling his destiny, but also defying a force that seemed destined to defeat every president elected under similar circumstances. For many, this made Trump's mission all the more meaningful, as if he were facing not just political adversaries or economic challenges, but also an ancient spiritual weight that has accompanied America's history. This narrative transformed Trump into something more than a simple leader. He became a fighter against the dark fate of presidents themselves. This echo of the past curse, coupled with current events, made many question what was really at stake. Had Trump escaped the tragedy only to play a greater role, to break this cycle of curse and lead the country into a new era? The idea that each president carries a spiritual burden when taking office makes us reflect on how profound the impact of these invisible forces can be. Meanwhile, the public remained attentive, awaiting the next chapter of this story. After all, when greater forces are at play, you never know what the future holds. Now that you've followed this entire journey, full of events that seem to have been written before they even happened, the question that remains is, how do you position yourself in the face of all this? This isn't just about what happened to Trump, but what it means for all of us. We are faced with signs that invite us to reflect on the role of destiny, faith, and human action. Is everything really written, or do we have the power to intervene and shape our future? Each of these episodes, from the assassination attempt to the spiritual battle that seems to involve the fate of an entire nation, shows us that there is much more at stake than simple political decisions. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? Maybe it's time for you too to raise your torch, to do your part in this battle that seems to be unfolding not only behind the scenes of power, but also within each one of us. Think about your own values, what you are willing to stand for, and how you can make a difference in the world around you. If it is true that there is a spiritual force guiding us, then every choice we make is a step on this greater journey. Don't just watch from afar. Participate. Make your voice heard. Did you enjoy discovering the invisible connections that shape events around us? So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This way, you can continue to follow everything that is revealed about these surprising events and, who knows, prepare yourself for what else is to come. And remember, knowledge is power. Share your ideas, question, get involved. Destiny is not a straight line. It is shaped by our decisions, and together, we can be protagonists of this story that is still being written. Stay with me until the end, because what you will see here is something that many still don't understand. Profound revelations, a new look at what is really at stake, and the certainty that destiny is often traced long before we even imagine it. You will want to understand all of this, and in the end, I promise that the vision you have about this historical moment will never be the same. Let's uncover, together, what the future holds and what the prophecies have already anticipated. Over the years, several prophecies have been made about Donald Trump. Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, and many other visionaries have spoken about him. Now imagine waking up and realizing that all those predictions, which were so often ignored, ridiculed, and discredited, are starting to come true before us. It is not fiction. It is not an exaggeration. It is a reality that is unfolding as we speak. The prophecy about Trump has been fulfilled, and the impact of this goes far beyond a simple headline or a common political event. It is the fulfillment of something greater, something that was predicted a long time ago, and that many preferred not to see. But now reality knocks on our door, and the question is, are we prepared for it? If you want to understand what is really happening and how these events can directly impact your life, stay with me. We're not talking about a conspiracy theory. We're talking about something concrete, here and now. The implications are profound, and there are truths that we all need to understand to know how to move forward. Get ready, because what is about to be revealed could change the way you see the world. During an intense campaign, Donald Trump experienced a moment that made the world hold its breath. A shot passed frighteningly close to his head during a rally, as if fate was playing with the fine line between life and death. Many people there in the crowd witnessed an instant that seemed to have come straight from the pages of a prophecy. He imagines being there and hearing the echo of that shot, the tension in the air, and the feeling that something much bigger was at stake. An event so dramatic that it could not go unnoticed, especially given the way it seemed to fulfill a prophetic warning already mentioned. This attempt on Trump's life is not just an episode to be forgotten, but a symbol that many believe carries an almost spiritual importance. For those who observe Trump's trajectory, this moment was interpreted as a materialization of something predicted by wise voices in the past, an omen of turbulent times. Just like historical events that always make us wonder about hidden forces behind the scenes, this incident was a nod of fate, a twist that for many seemed inevitable.